Welcome to Midnight Menu Plus One. I'm Ray Canada.
And I'm Margo Moss.
We are here once again at Ted's Frostop on the corner of Claiborne and Calhoun in Uptown New Orleans, where we meet each week with a key member of the New Orleans restaurant and food community. We're very excited to have with us today David de Felice, aren't we?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about it.
On tonight's show, we're going to the Lakefront. West End and New Orleans Lakefront used to be a vibrant mecca of entertainment and dining not so many years ago. From Pontchartrain Beach to Fitzgerald's, Sid Mar's, Brunings, Bart's, and Jaeger's, the area used to be teeming with life. Then came the economic downturn and changing habits that closed Pontchartrain Beach, and many of the restaurants started closing. Two storms shut down Brunings twice, and eventually Katrina washed everything away. Well, today, New Orleans Lakefront is starting to come back with the help of a new restaurant built from the ground up called Brisbi's. Tonight we have David de Felice from Brisbi's, the general manager and chef. So we're very excited to have him here tonight.
Yes. Welcome.
Pleased to be here. Thank you.
All right. Well, tell us about this concept. I mean, how'd you become involved? How'd you choose the lakefront as your location? Were there other options for you? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's real simple. The owner had his eyes on waterfront location for a long time, unbeknownst to me. He told me years ago when we met that he wanted to open a restaurant. I had no idea it was eventually going to be a lakefront deal. But when he found a location, he gave me a call. Showed me the proposal, and here we are.
And who is that owner?
John Brisbi.
John Brisbi.
Yeah, he's. I met him. He was actually working at my family's restaurant while I was there when he was in college.
And that's Pascal Manale?
Oh, yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
And he literally came to me one day and said, one day I'm going to open a restaurant, and when I do, I'll give you a call. And I got that phone call about 2 years ago.
All right. So why were you able to leave your family restaurant?
I was already out of there.
Okay.
I had moved on. I was working at a hotel in the city, and when I saw the proposal, when I saw the space where his restaurant was going to take up, I said, I'm all in. I got about maybe 3 pages into the proposal, and I said, I'm in. Let's go.
All right. And when was that?
Roughly 2 years ago. 2 years and a couple months.
Okay, so how long did it take from that development to opening the doors?
Well, there was a process that had to ensue from that point. He had to go before the levy board and pitch the idea.
Because there's other complications, I guess. You have the levy involved in it, don't
there's
you?
a ton of complications. Well, we had to pitch the idea, get approval. He had to go up against other potential business owners, potential entrepreneurs and business owners with different business concepts and ideas and projects.
What were some of the other concepts like?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. It was a unanimous decision to go with Brisbi and his restaurant project. And that went before the levy board as well as some of the neighborhood committees. And so that was the first step in the process. So he was awarded the lease. It's all state-owned land out there, and it's managed by the levy board. He was awarded the lease. We were able to get in there and say, okay, now we have the lease. Then the next step in the process is getting awarded the permits to do the work, meaning starting with demo. We had to tear down the old building, start anew, and rebuild.
And what was there before?
The Hong Kong restaurant,
okay.
which if I remember correctly, probably opened in the 60s. And did not reopen after Katrina. So it was there. The building was in disrepair. It was, kind of falling down. It was bottom line, a blighted property in the neighborhood. And when he or we came in, we took that down. So that was one set of permits. The next set of permits was to actually build on that space. So, a few more months go by, permits come in. A lot of hoops to jump through, and he was able to build it. And the fortunate thing for us, where we stand today, is his professional career prior to that was commercial construction.
All right.
So he built us a gorgeous restaurant, a beautiful building, and here we are.
So is it actually on the levee? Is that what it is?
It's on the New Basin Canal.
Okay, it's on the canal. Okay. So what do you? So what kind of height did he have? Were there requirements about the height? And
I believe 16 feet.
16 feet it had to be up. Okay. Wow.
That's correct.
That's challenging.
It is, and
But it creates a
again,
great view, I bet, huh?
the view is amazing because we look straight into the channel, right into the Orleans Harbor. So we get to see all the boats coming in and going out, and it's a beautiful space. It really is. And one of the genius things that was done there in the building process by Mr. Brisbi was he built the restaurant just a few inches taller than the levee itself. So, and God forbid, in the case of the next big flood, if water breaches the levee, theoretically we don't get water in the restaurant.
Right.
Just because we're a few inches
The
taller.
levee
than
breaks and the water level goes down a little bit, and you're
well,
okay.
even if it doesn't break, but if it just breaches.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Because there's not a surge where we're kind of protected by the harbor.
Right, and we know that's never going to happen again because the Army Corps promised us.
Absolutely. Look, Army Corps is on our team, and we believe. So yeah, I mean, it's a great space. It's a space that needed to come back.
Yes.
New Orleans has been missing this for years, and in my personal and professional opinion, I've said this for a long time, even pre-Katrina. We live in a town surrounded by water.
Yeah.
We have, you ask for directions in New Orleans, and it's toward the lake or toward the river.
Right.
We've had, a small handful of restaurants on water in this town.
Well, I mean, there's even the lake alone, right? There's got to be 7 miles within the city limits that borders the lake, or at least 6 miles. Not even counting New Orleans East.
I would say minimum.
And, yeah,
minimum.
And what do we have? We have a few restaurants, just a handful that look out on it. It's crazy. It's bizarre. It's It's like the largest brackish lake in the country, and
that same theory or statement applies to the river.
yeah.
When you talk about New Orleans or the whole metro area,
Right.
include Jefferson Parish and
Right.
the surrounding areas, we just don't have restaurants on the water.
Yeah, there's like
which we
Galvez
should.
in the quarters up high. You can kind of see the river. There's not too many. You can really see the river.
Our license plates have said Sportsman's Paradise all my life. And it's because we have so much, water around us. We don't have the retail space, meaning restaurants, on
Yeah.
water, which is a shame.
Now, that proposal that you looked at, right, and you said by page 3, you said, okay, that's it. I don't need to read anymore. How long was it? Was it like a phone book, or was it?
It was a binder.
4 pages?
He showed me the same proposal he showed the bank.
Yeah, how big was it, I mean?
It was about maybe 1.5 inch binder. And
So how'd you know all the fine print was the chef's going to work for free?
he's a good guy, and I trusted him.
Okay.
So let me ask you a little bit about, since we're talking about the water and the beautiful views, I'd like to hear about your concept for the food and the experience once you step in the...
For me personally, walking into this to this concept, to this restaurant, it was real easy for me to think about what I wanted the menu to be. I knew I did not want it to be all the old restaurants, meaning fried and boiled seafood across the menu, 3 pages long. I wanted to make a more contemporary approach to it. I knew we were going to have a more contemporary building. The space, the aesthetic was going to be more of a contemporary approach for sure. And the fried and boiled seafood, don't get me wrong, nothing wrong with that. We all love it. But in the old days, every single restaurant out there had, menus that mirrored each other. So we wanted to take it a little bit of different approach, and we did that. And we have minimum 5 different types of fresh fish in the building every single day that the menu actually calls for. And we took it in that route, and I threw in a little curveball of a New England style lobster roll. Something that I never personally had in New England. I saw it on the Food Network and said, that looks awesome, and I've never seen it here in New Orleans. Well, let's try that, and let's try and keep it simple. Let's try and keep it authentic, and let's put it on the menu. And I told somebody this a few weeks ago. It's the best $25 sandwich in town, and we sell a ton of them. And it's great. Y'all buy true Maine lobster from Maine, and it gets shipped into my local vendor. Buy it a few times a week, and we put it on a toasted hoagie bun, and it's pretty amazing. It really is. And I don't know where else you can get that.
Now, what about? Don't you have some meat items too? You're not just solely
No,
seafood, right?
we put a few things on our menu to where, if you were to group people and you say, hey, let's go out to dinner, and one person in the group says, I can't eat seafood, well, I didn't want to be taken off your list of opportunities that night. So we got to say, we have an 8-ounce filet. I'm buying about the best meat I can find. We actually did a taste test with 4 different vendors in town to test all of our meat items. And I had 8 people in the building to do that taste test. And we didn't even look at price. I did not tell my owner the price. I didn't tell the other testers on the panel, so to speak, that even what these meats were going to cost me. We strictly chose the best tasting meat. I've got a custom blended burger that's a brisket and chuck blend. I've got a 16-ounce pork porterhouse, and I have an 8-ounce filet, center cut. And we got beautiful meat. We also have an herb-crusted chicken that we sell. I buy it all fresh, never frozen. And like I said, the whole idea, I don't want to exclude people who can't or don't want to or won't eat seafood.
Great. And I noticed on your menu, too, that you have recommended wines paired with the food.
Absolutely.
And I personally really appreciate that, because I'm not always comfortable to ask, and I'm not knowledgeable about wine. And so that's a great, was that in your initial concept to help customers come in and have a full dining experience? Or?
Of course, yeah. We sat down with our wine vendor, and he's a gentleman who I've personally known for a long time. He's been in the wine business. He had his own personal retail store many years ago, and now he's been selling wine commercially to restaurants and bars in town for, I want to say, roughly 30 years. What we did was we sat down with him, and we actually did this, and this is the fun part. We did this at my brother's home. My brother's a huge wine fanatic. He's a avid wine collector, and I trust his opinions very, very much when it comes to wine. So John Brisbi and I sat down with the wine vendor and my brother at my brother's home, and we started going through wine and tasting them and tasting them and tasting them. And we were doing that while looking at the menu and saying, this might be good with this, this, and this. So between the 4 of us, we started pairing them up, and we put them on the menu. And like you said, to make it easier for the consumer who maybe doesn't want to ask or maybe doesn't know enough. And our whole concept was to have people enjoy wine with their meal, because it's going to make their overall experience that much better. I know I love wine, and I know a little bit. I would love to know more. When I go out, I always actually ask for my server's opinion of what's going to go great with the meal that I'm about to get. And the outcome is that the consumer, the guest in our restaurant, has a better experience enjoying a great glass of wine with their meal.
Well, I have to just tell you, I saw y'all's Facebook page, and I have never seen so many likes. I mean, it's really incredible. Y'all have thousands of likes for your restaurant, and it's really impressive.
You'll
and
generate
it's
that
really
with a
fun.
computer, right?
Huh? But they show and it's a lot of people too. Right. That it's a wide mix of local people. You know, like all ages, and really. So
we've been blessed with that. Our demographic really stretches pretty wide, and we obviously, because of where we are, unlike my experience growing up in the restaurant business, we're not relying on tourism, because we're not, we are in the city of New Orleans proper, but we're not in the downtown area or uptown area. So we're not going to experience a whole lot of tourism. We're kind of off the beaten path. Even for locals, we're off the beaten path.
Yeah.
The Lakeview community has been really great with us, and then it reaches out even further than that. And we've been blessed with that. The clientele has been really awesome. They've been very supportive, and they've been coming out pretty heavy.
Great.
Right. Well, looks like your +1 is here. Can you introduce him for us?
Yeah, this is my owner and my buddy, John Brisbi.
All
How
right.
y'all doing, folks?
Welcome.
Thank you.
On Minute Menu Plus One, we have a mystery guest each time. We ask the guest to bring a mystery guest, a plus one, and that's what this is. So thanks, John. Good
Thank
to have
you very much. Appreciate it. Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah. All right.
So I'd like to know, y'all met? Besides, I mean, it's obvious you brought him tonight.
Right.
Y'all are partners, but when you first met, how old were you, John? And
Let's see. I started as a busboy at Pascal Manale's. I was
No kidding.
I believe I was 18 or 19 years old, and worked my way up to a server. Started trying to earn David's respect as a server, and as I grew passion for the restaurant business happened on Napoleon right there. It was something that it was family oriented. It was fantastic experience for me, and I just said one day I'm going to do this, and I'm going to call you. And he goes, all right, you let me know. Probably not thinking anything of it. And I called him. We hadn't talked in a while, and we had spent many nights together and many years. While I worked there, I believe I worked there 3 or 4 years, somewhere in between. And then I went about my construction career, and then something I felt like was missing, so I took a passion on to develop a restaurant, and specifically waterfront. That was my passion, was a waterfront restaurant in a city that I feel is really lacking.
So you had this dream and vision years ago.
Years ago.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And you just patiently were able to get to a place where you could execute.
That's
it.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I started as a contractor. I figured out there were avenues to possibly peel back layers to do it in the city of New Orleans. It was not easy to build in this town on the water after Katrina, but you scratch hard enough, you're going to get through it. So,
Sounds the cost a lot higher building right there on the waterfront than in other places. More just the hassle is greater.
it's the
more hoops to jump through, but
it's the unknown, I think, from where it stands from a contractor standpoint and a bureaucratic standpoint, where there are several permits that are required, A, on the water, and B, after Katrina. But it's just a process, and you follow it, you're going to get it done. It's just who's willing to get it done.
Well, to chime in, if I remember correctly, there was that trifecta of where we are. Where we sit is state-owned land. It's owned by the state. It's managed by the Orleans Levee Board, and it sits on federal water.
oh gee.
Which is
So you have conflicting
That-
interests and all that,
and that was the
conflicting
difficult part,
zoning
because
and-
then you got to follow all of the city of New Orleans regulations
Right.
post Katrina,
which may be the opposite of what the federal regulations are.
Precisely. That's
Right,
that's where like David always says when he used to calm me down because I was so frustrated at times. He goes, "You're fighting a moving target,"
Yeah.
and that's what it really was. That's the best metaphor he could have put on it.
And yet so important for the city. I mean, what a great blessing for the city to be having that space used and just bring something that nowhere else can.
Absolutely.
The city should really want to encourage that. I'm sure there were some people that were very encouraged by your project too, right? And
Sure.
probably helped you through it.
And it went back to the Facebook likes in regards to the overwhelming support we had from the community, because I think we started with like over 2,000 Facebook likes before we even opened the doors. Yeah, I mean, it was impressive. And so, yeah, the whole community was backing it. What the whole community did not know is that, again, there are processes that were very difficult to get through. But, you know, at that point in the game, we had no choice but just continue to punch through them.
2 years, I mean, I'm sure it was an excruciating process,
Right.
but that doesn't seem that long to me, even just in construction.
Well-
like, doesn't it take that long just to build something?
From a
not for
contractor's
him.
David was there for me pretty much every step of the way in regards to construction. I would call him even when he was employed at another place, and then he came on for me basically as a consultant trying to design it. From a construction standpoint, I said, once I can get my permit, I got my hands on this thing. It was all the events leading up to it where it was uncharted waters. And, yeah, I believe it took us 7 months to build out, and
Wow.
the rest of it was the process, like we
process.
call it.
That's kind of amazing.
The building happened really fast. It truly did, and I know myself. I got a crash course in the construction world. Like he said, I left my previous job a few months prior to us opening, and was at the construction site. We actually did our interviewing for staff at the construction site for a couple of months. I mean, it was.
And why'd you do it there?
Became a selling point.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It must be great to say, yeah. Can you envision this? Get
Right.
excited about this. Look out on the water.
And it wasn't always pretty. I mean, we did it in a bare bones office. And for the listeners, I'm doing air quotes right now. It was an office, but it was. Even in March, it was cold. We had blistering winds, and it was cold out there. But I mean, I was impressed knowing, walking in, knowing nothing about the construction business, how fast the building went up, and it did. It was nice.
Now, John, are you involved day to day at the restaurant too, or is it?
I am. I'm more of the
do
guy
you do
behind
there?
the scenes, and I'll come up on the floor during the busy shifts. But I'm more the guy handling the shift and the financials. Where David, knowing his experience, and he's brought on a team of managers that are very professional, several decades. I'll say several years of experience in this business. So, I leave it to the people to do what they do while they train me. Because remember, like you said, I was a general contractor less than 90 days ago.
Less than 90 days ago.
Now, did you, your background is from Pascal Manale's, your family
Been around
business.
100 years, right?
It's certainly my core background, no doubt.
Was that
Your
your great grandfather was the founder, wasn't it, or?
Pascal Radasta was my great grandfather. His uncle, Frank Manale, actually opened a restaurant originally. It was originally Manale's restaurant. And
Was it always in that spot?
same location.
Wow.
That, take it back a little bit further, was originally a corner store and a meat market separated by an alley. And that alley now is the maitre d' station and ladies' restroom. And the avenue takes you to the two main dining rooms. The two main dining rooms being that meat market and the corner store.
Okay, so Italian family, it's the great-grandfather's uncle that starts it. So that's a lot of generations. Just some simple math would tell me that person, Manale, would have dozens of grandchildren. So not all of them stayed in the family business. They probably went out and did a lot of different things. But your wing of the family did, or you did at first?
What happened was the Manale family phased out really quickly. Pascal Radasta, who took it over, like I said, from his uncle, who he was working for, he brought in his family. And this is where it gets weird. Pascal's two daughters.
We like weird here, okay.
You're about to get it. Pascal's two daughters, the two Radasta girls, married two de Felice brothers. And the older set, Francis and Steve de Felice, Francis originally being a Radasta, they owned it for 20 plus years leading up into the mid to late 80s. In the mid to late 80s, the next rung down, Sever de Felice and Virginia de Felice, who is my grandparents, they bought it, and them and their children took it over and started running it then in 1988, and that's my father, his parents, his siblings.
So did you grow up in the restaurant as a little kid? I mean, just...
I was hanging around there when I was real young. I was legitimately put to work at 13.
Probably because he was causing trouble.
Yeah,
I knew him when he was young.
yeah, I was that guy. But
so did you grow up in Uptown, or did your parents
no,
live nearby?
I grew up in Metairie.
Metairie, okay.
My dad's family actually was born in Plaquemines Parish, way down the road. They were born around Myrtle Grove, lived there originally. My grandfather and my grandmother moved them up to Belchase. That house still stands. The house that my father grew up in, my grandfather still lives in. And they were in, even way back in I'm going to say probably the 50s and the 60s, my grandfather had an oyster packing plant where he had oyster fishermen. He had an actual packing plant in Plaquemines Parish. So they've always been around food. And
so what relation are you to the current owners?
it's my father and
It's
his
your father.
siblings.
Okay, yeah. Okay, you
Yeah,
lost
so
me there a
we're-
little bit.
Yeah, well, there's
transitions,
4
okay.
siblings, one of
Okay.
whom being my father.
Oh, wow.
And you have you spoke a little bit. You have a brother,
I do.
and is that the only siblings you have?
I have one brother and one sister. My brother owns a dental practice in Metairie. He, much like myself, worked at Manale's for roughly 15 years, off and on.
And he's the wine connoisseur?
He is.
Right, okay.
Him and I are the oldest of our generation of my family. So he was the first of my generation to work there. He, much like myself, started as a dishwasher. He chose a different path and went to the front of the house. And he made his, career, so to speak, there while going through school as a server. And he did that for years, all through LSU undergrad and then through LSU dental school even. He worked as a server whenever he could. And even after was a practicing dentist, went back and worked as a maitre d' and, help out, just for fun when he could, because that's what we call it. It's fun. I mean, we love hanging out at Manale's. It's a great place to be. Myself, on the other hand, I stayed in the kitchen. Now, over the years, I worked all the spots, mostly as a fill-in. I was formally trained by the people in those positions, but then never chose to go that route. I worked as a fill-in over the years, from everything from the dish room to behind the bar to working the books in the office with my aunt. And
so you're like a utility player, huh?
Oh yeah.
Well said.
I wore a lot of hats over there.
Well, that's good though. I mean, that's great for being, sort of overseeing a whole restaurant, because you know all the phases of the operation, done it all.
There's no doubt. I mean, when I was younger, in high school, there was a short period of time where I was a little bit bitter about having to go to work, at such an early age. Nobody I knew went to work that early, age-wise.
You would have been bitter about something else if it wasn't that.
Yeah,
right?
Well
I
said.
would have found something.
Well said.
But I can tell you, by the time I was just maybe 20 or 21 years old, looking back at the 13 or 14-year-old washing dishes, I don't regret it. And especially now, looking back, there's no way I would be where I am today if it wouldn't be for my father pushing me into the position to begin with, and I fell in love with it. I knew by the time I was 17 years old that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
So now, why'd you leave to go work in? You worked in the Pontchartrain Hotel, and you worked in.
I worked at a couple places over the years. Yeah, for me.
How old were you when you left? First of all,
the first time I left, I was about 21, 22 years old, and I went to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, and it was an opportunity for me to learn something else. I knew I loved my industry. I knew I was doing what I was going to do for the rest of my life at that point. And I figured, well, let's go try something new. And when I started looking around, I got courted by a few different companies. The corporate ones I was uninterested in, including Ruth's Chris actually to begin with. And the reason I actually chose them was because they were a local company originally.
All right.
And I went there. It was a great experience. I learned a lot of great people. It was a total culture shock because I went into a restaurant that at that time had 85 to 89 units worldwide.
Wow.
And I left the quintessential family restaurant.
Yeah, and the first one was here, but by that time they were just a big corporation.
And it's actually,
it was a culture shock.
That actually, believe it or not, when he parted ways, allowed him to expand his horizon more than those, let's just call them 100-plus-year-old recipes that are fantastic. Right. There's no doubt.
Right.
But it's he got to stretch his wings a little bit.
Well, like for example, the barbecue shrimp, right? Now, how old is that recipe actually? How long have they been doing it the way they're doing it now?
That was from Pascal himself and a buddy of his. That was in about 1952 or 53. Pascal died in 58. Wow. That just started a few years before he passed, and that was him and a buddy.
Now, did he actually invent that?
It was him and a buddy of his. The buddy was going back and forth to Chicago. Had some dish in Chicago that he enjoyed. At that time, Pascal was hanging out with some friends on Sundays. They would have wine and cook in the kitchen. This guy said, let's try and reproduce this dish I had in Chicago. They attempted to reproduce it. What they came up with is what we all know today as barbecue shrimp.
Which wasn't what they had in Chicago.
It wasn't exactly right. And the
Way
name
better,
wasn't
probably.
the same.
Yeah.
But You know,
Now, I mean, for our listeners, and most of our listeners probably aren't even local, like, describe what barbecue shrimp is. When I first got here 8 years ago, I saw that on a menu. I think the first time I saw it was probably at Pascal Manale's. Because I went there a couple weeks after I moved here. I live close by. And I was thinking, like, Texas barbecue sauce on some shrimp. I thought, that sounds awful, but it's not. It's wonderful. It's nothing like that.
I wonder the same thing. How do you get how did that get its name?
How did it get that
Dave?
name?
Do you have any clue?
Nobody has an actual definitive answer.
Because nobody's barbecuing anything in that, right?
I think my idea of the answer is the most correct that I've come across. If you read the menu the way it's always read since its inception, it says a spicy, tangy sauce. Back in those days, barbecue sauce, as you and I know it, did not exist on the shelves in the grocery store where there's 30 varieties.
Right.
Barbecue sauce is something people made in their kitchens at home. And by definition, it would have been a spicy, tangy sauce. So it makes sense. That's what I like to believe.
Huh.
And again, from a culinary standpoint, it makes sense.
Now, do you have an homage to that at y'all's place?
Absolutely. I have my own recipe and my own method, and they are different.
Do you call it barbecue shrimp then?
Absolutely.
But it's different than Pascal Manale's.
If I remember correctly, it's even called traditional barbecue shrimp on the menu. Yeah, certainly. I mean, there's no way I could write my own menu and not have barbecue shrimp on it. That would be silly.
Do your parents come to your restaurant? Your uncles come to your restaurant?
I see my family now more than I did before.
They pay the utility bills.
Well, I have tons more questions, but first we have to get to the book of questions. Now, this is part of the show where you pick a number between 1 and 217, and we ask you this question from 1980 when this was very popular, and y'all were probably
not
born?
Even
in
not even
1980.
Yeah, not even a dream.
Nah, I had about 3 years until
I was around.
Okay.
I popped up.
Okay, so let's start with you, David.
Okay.
What's your favorite number?
1.
1.
All right, we've never had 1. How did it take a year for us to finally get 1?
Really?
Okay, for a person you love deeply, would you be willing to move to a distant country?
No.
Okay.
Same way he read the
great.
contract. He does it before it's over. Is that how you did the SATs too?
Well said. He doesn't know the clauses I have in there. No.
Yeah, have you not heard all the family talk? I've got a big family here. I love my family to death.
You wouldn't even leave the city, really, would you? Wouldn't leave the southeast Louisiana.
He doesn't vacation
I
either.
No.
His vacation
Good.
is
I respect
7400
that.
Lakeshore Drive.
Yeah,
All right.
No,
I'm the same way.
Honestly, when I hear stories about that, and what maybe it's in a movie or somebody I personally know that they fell in love and they moved over here, and I think that's crazy. I'm sure that love is out there, and maybe it exists. For me, I've got a very large family. I love them to death. I've got a lot of really close friends that I made a long time ago. I've still got friends that I made in the 3rd grade who are in my life on a very regular basis.
That's beautiful.
David, it would make sense if you grew up in New Jersey.
Right.
That poor girl.
You grew up in paradise, that's why.
To travel away from here, to me, is not going to happen.
All right. So are you single?
I'm not. I have a girlfriend
All right.
of a little bit over 2 years.
All right. Good. Well, what does she think about your new routine?
It's rough.
Does she hang out at the restaurant a lot too?
No, because she also works in hospitality. She's the guest services manager at a hotel.
All right.
And, she understood this going into it. She knew when I was going into it what my commitment was going to be, and it terrified her. And we discuss it often. But she's been a trooper. She's been really great.
And has she been able to see too that, like, I heard you say, like, when you worked with your family, that it was fun and your family was in there, and so is that same atmosphere? I mean, I know y'all are new, but are you having the same feelings like you're in your home, or and sharing with your friends and family?
I would tell you, it's especially coming from where I come from, and he worked there at Pascal Manale. When you have a place that old and with a family who's that dug into it, that's hard to duplicate and replicate. I will say this, overall, from a staffing standpoint, we started, we got punched in the mouth a little bit. It was hard. I think like any business, certainly any restaurant, but our staff has come together.
Now, how'd you get punched in the mouth? What does that look like? Give us an example without throwing anybody under the bus.
I can give it from a bird's eye perspective. But no,
it was brutal. In the beginning, the volume of business we did, we never projected. We had no clue.
So you're understaffed?
No, it wasn't understaffed. We were overrun. We were having 2+ hour waits for tables in the first few weeks. The first 30, 40 days was just rough. And again, we're, not coming from a corporate place where we had, binders of training manuals. We had myself and John and a couple other managers that were, trying to steer their staff in the correct direction. And, as the best we could do it, it was trying to keep up with the volume of business, where we were literally having hundreds of people walk through the door every day.
So how'd you solve the problem? Would you?
Well, let me just start by saying. Let me just start by saying that from a construction standpoint, even though he and I consulted on many occasions about storage and prep availabilities and where are we going to store this? What are we going to do with this? It was when those people finally heard the doors were open, that supporting community we were just talking about, they were ready. And once the floodgates were open, boom, here they came. Well, all of a sudden we realized we don't have enough storage, we don't have enough prep area, we don't have enough availability to keep product in the building.
Parking? You have enough parking?
We have parking. We have between the Brisbi's facility, we have over 40 spaces, but we also have public parking across the street of about 100 spaces, and we have almost 200 spaces down the road. That's within walking distance. The thing is that had I known the response that was going to come, I did hamstring our general management in regards to feasibility of how we're going to execute. And that was the thing. It was like, how do you handle 200 plus people coming through on a Friday or Saturday night while you're just starting to figure out, that menu, that recipe takes butter as well? Yeah. I mean, there's no. They were all complete strangers.
So did you end up needing to hire more people, or was it a matter of just figuring out a different way to manage the flow?
There's one key word to it, and I'm going to default to David when he says it. It's repetition.
Huh.
He said, "You give me." He said, "You give me repetition."
Then when you learn how to do it,
let me keep training the kitchen staff. I said, "I need more prep area." He told me exactly what he needed, and ever since I gave him that, smooth sailing.
It was. You got to understand this, and again, like I said, I've worked in corporations where they have these giant manuals that look like Bibles from the company
and budgets,
which is a great thing, and they've got corporate pockets, which we didn't walk in with, and a couple kids from Metairie just trying to make it right, and we certainly did our best, and I think looking back now, a little bit over 3 months in, we did a fantastic job, but like I said, we're a little bit over 3 months in. 4 months ago, the entire menu that's served in our restaurant only existed in my mind. I put recipes on paper, but the point is everything had to be translated through these lips to 10, 12 strangers, and that's just on the the menu. The recipe and the technical aspect, the method aspect of it, of producing the food. Then we had to go in the front and train all the service staff. This is what this is supposed to taste like. This is what it's supposed to look like. This is what's in it. Be aware of people with allergies. These are all the ingredients. There's a lot. There is a lot, not just for us, but for anybody who opens a restaurant. There's a lot involved in it. There's a lot of nuts and bolts to it that, again, I've got 21 years experience in the restaurant business. I've never opened a new restaurant, and it was certainly a challenge. I will say this. Looking back where we are today, I think we're doing a great job. Do we have room to improve? Of course, we all do. Everybody does. And we're only going to get better.
I think we got to ask John his question, too.
Sure.
Okay.
What's your number?
3. Babe Ruth.
All right. Babe Ruth. All right.
He's the best.
He was the best. All right. Grant watched Babe Ruth play when he was they were on a little league team together. If you were able to die this evening with no opportunity to communicate with anyone, what would you most regret not having told someone? Why haven't you told them yet?
Jeez,
That's deep.
I'm going to need that. Can you give it to me one more
That's
time?
a nightmare-inducing question. If you were to die this evening with no opportunity to communicate with anyone, what would you most regret not having told someone? And why then haven't you told them yet?
Wow.
You're going to be making a phone call tonight after this.
Well,
Good job, Babe Ruth.
you know, it's funny because I could kind of spin this on why we're here in the first place because, you know, I don't get into political discussions because I have no idea about
please.
them.
Go
I'm
ahead.
not. It's just it would be the heartache that we had developing this restaurant because of bureaucratic measures that stood in our way.
So there's some people you would like to tell off if you knew you were going to
Well,
die.
I don't say tell off,
but
but I just need an explanation on why it was that difficult to do something so fantastic for this city.
right.
I don't want to tell anybody off. That's not what I do, and that's not apparently the business I've jumped into. I just want to.
You just want to know.
I just got a lot of questions of if those are laws or why they are laws. Again, why are they?
what is motivating you to do this to me? Yeah, right.
What has happened down all this tenure of years to make it to where when a guy like me is trying to implement something what I've got going on, well, why is it that
Spend
difficult?
money, do something local, do something
Right.
unique.
It's all private
increase
money.
the food culture, and people are just trying to stop you for no reason.
Exactly. It's all money we've earned
That's
and
a
paid.
great answer to number 3.
Yeah, well, it's all,
Yeah.
and it's been on my mind for the past 2 years, and it's something that I want to seek answers on. I'll never get answers on, nor do I have time to go ask those questions.
Right. Well, don't you think, though, the fantastic thing, y'all are like an anchor for other, I mean, you really,
Right.
as difficult and as horrendous as that process was, you made it through it.
Right.
And y'all are going to really, it's really going to enable other people to move forward because you pioneered through it. So there's,
Well, I see the war being waged on our culture by the city council lately, and I wonder, you need to run. You really do. Can you please run? You could be like the poster boy for that. You were a victim of it. You know what not to do.
What is zoning commission or get
Yeah,
involved
well, they're
in
another one. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We had another restaurant remain nameless where the neighborhood association, which tends to be the most restrictive, begged this restaurant to come, and the zoning commission did not approve.
Would
them.
there be any way you could tell me the name of that restaurant or the location?
you know what I'm talking about, don't you know?
I would love to. I think I do because I spent.
We'll talk off the air about that. I already get myself in trouble.
Man.
Oh, it looks like we're running out of time. We're going to get to wrap up soon, but I think you had some other questions, Margo?
Yes, I wanted to know how the staff handled this slamming, 2-hour wait, and how that worked out since y'all started.
Fantastically. They were very supportive. Jonathan and myself, the other managers, we threw ourselves into the flames, and they followed us. And you couldn't ask for anything better.
Because it must have gotten kind of tense, right? I mean, when you got these kind of crowds,
it was
kind of stress.
It was tough on a lot of people, and look, we only had to lose/replace a very small handful. I'm talking legitimately 3-4 people from opening day. We've still got the vast majority of our opening team there.
That's amazing.
Wow.
I'm gonna tell you,
Wait, 3 or 4 you said you've had to let go?
yeah, total.
Wow.
And it's not necessarily we let them go. I mean, I can understand their frustration.
They
May have
couldn't
set
handle
in,
it.
Yeah,
right?
some of them just couldn't handle it. weren't thrilled about it, and we had to part ways. But yeah, we wouldn't be here right now if it weren't for those guys. And we spent a lot of time. We started interviewing people in March, and I'm gonna tell you, I think we interviewed about 130 people total to fill roughly 42, 43 spots. And we've been blessed.
And 90% of those are still with you then, huh?
More than 90.
Wow.
Staff's been awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
And our management as well. I got to Scott, Mike. I know you don't know these guys; they're not here. Scott and Mike are amazing. Brian, our bar manager, amazing. We wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it weren't for them.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah,
It's really
thank you.
exciting.
Thank y'all so much.
Appreciate it.
Well, I think we are out of time, unfortunately. Man, that went by fast. What an interesting story, though, you have. And we'd love to have you back on again soon, and you can tell us a little bit more how it's progressing as we go.
Sure.
Good night.
Thank
Good
y'all
night.
very much.
Thank
Our
y'all.
guest tonight has been Chef David de Felice and John Brisbi of Brisbi's. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wait, guys, will you please tell our audience
Yes.
your hours and your location and
Sure. We're only closed on Tuesdays, so Wednesday through Monday we're open 11:30 a.m. straight through dinner, and we're at 7400 Lakeshore Drive, which is right past Robert E. Lee when you cross over the Lock Bridge, and that's where we are.
All right,
we look forward
website?
to seeing you.
www.brisbysrestaurant.com.
Say it one more time.
brisbysrestaurant.com. One more time.
I heard some ice being
Spell
spilled
it.
back there. Yep.
spell it for us too.
That's BRISBIS restaurant.com.
Okay, well, we'll have more of that information on our website along with the show for everyone to see. And thank you so much for joining us. This has been a real delight.
Our pleasure.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Our show is recorded live at Ted's Frostop on Claiborne Avenue in Calhoun in Uptown New Orleans. Ted's is open 7 days a week, serving first-class burgers, beer, and their awesome homemade root beer in a frosty mug. Midnight Menu Plus One is produced by Grant Morris, and Chris Keogh is our technical director. And this fabulous audio quality that you hear is by PreSonus Audio Electronics. Makes all kinds of wonderful things. Visit presonus.com for more information. You can get in touch with us here at Midnight Menu Plus One by going to our website. It's neworleans.com, and from there you can follow us on Twitter, find us on Facebook, sign up for our mailing list, get all kinds of swag. And while you're at itsneworleans.com, you can listen to other episodes of Midnight Menu Plus One and our other shows, Happy Hour, Mindset, True to the Game, Vietnola, Out to Lunch, and others. And if you listen to the show on iTunes, please rate us and review us. It helps other people to find us. Midnight Menu Plus One is a production of INO Broadcasting for itsneworleans.com. Until we meet here again at Ted's Frostop, I am Ray Canada.
And I'm Margo Moss. Thanks.
You know Labor Day signals the unofficial end of summer, but not the end of your outdoor projects. Lowe's helps you do it right and helps you save with Labor Day deals throughout the store. Shop now and get 2 bags of Stay Green potting mix for $12. And keep your lawn looking neat and trim with a Craftsman 2-cycle 17-inch gas string trimmer, now $20 off at just $119. Whatever's still on your to-do list this Labor Day, do it right for less. Start with Lowe's. Offers valid through 8/28. Soil offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii. U.S. only.